terrified waitress. Abusive ex, biker gang watching silently. What they did next demolished his empire without throwing a single punch. Before diving in, smash that subscribe button and drop a comment with your city. Inhale deeply, unwind, and savor the tale ahead. The bell above the diner door chimed like a warning shot. 12 leather-clad bikers walked in, their boots heavy on the worn checkerboard floor. The afternoon sun slanted through the Venetian blinds, cutting stripes of light and shadow across their weathered faces. At the counter, an elderly man paused mid-bite, his fork suspended above a slice of apple pie. A young couple in the corner booth instinctively pulled their toddler closer. Marcus removed his sunglasses first. His crew followed suit, a synchronized gesture of respect. "The Steel Riders didn't come here to scare anybody," he said, his voice carrying that particular quality of calm authority that made people relax despite themselves. "We'll take the back booths. Coffee all around, please." The diner was called Roses, one of those forgotten roadside places that time had polished instead of ruined. Red vinyl seats patched with duct tape, a jukebox that only played songs from 1995, and the smell of burnt coffee and maple syrup thick enough to taste hung in the air like a comfortable old blanket. Behind the counter, a black woman in her late 20s looked up from wiping down the surface. Her name tag read Tanya in faded letters. "Coming right up," she said, her smile genuine but tired in a way that had nothing to do with the hour. Marcus watched her move toward the coffee station. That's when he saw it, the slight hitch in her left leg, not quite a limp, more like she was protecting something, favoring one side. She moved like someone who'd learned to hide pain so well it had become part of her natural rhythm. His crew settled into the booths, still buzzing from the charity ride. They'd just delivered $3,000 worth of school supplies to the reservation up north. "Good day, clean consciences. The kind of tired that feels earned. Yo, Marcus, remember when that kid asked if your bike was a spaceship?" Devon laughed, pulling off his bandana. "His face when you revved the engine. Priceless, man." Marcus smiled, but his attention had drifted. Tanya was carrying a tray of mugs, balanced perfectly despite everything. But that leg, she was compensating hard, putting extra weight on her right side. When she reached their table, she set the cups down with practiced efficiency. Marcus noticed the slight tremor in her right hand, overcompensating for whatever was wrong with her left side. "Sugar's on the table, cream's coming," she said. "You gentlemen need menus or just coffee today?" "Just coffee's fine," Marcus said, then carefully added, "Long shift?" Something flickered across her face, surprise, maybe caution. "Every shift's long here," she said lightly. "But it's honest work." She moved to the next booth. The limp was more pronounced from behind, and Marcus's jaw tightened. Devon noticed his expression. "Boss," Devon said quietly. "Nothing," Marcus replied. But it wasn't nothing. The thing about Marcus was this. He'd grown up in a house where his mother hid bruises with makeup and long sleeves. He'd learned early that silence could be its own kind of violence. He'd sworn at 15, standing over his father's unconscious body after he'd finally fought back, that he'd never ignore the signs again. Tanya brought their cream. When she leaned over to set it down, her sleeve rode up just slightly, just enough. A bracelet of purple and yellow decorated her wrist, the kind that didn't come from jewelry. Marcus's blood went cold. She noticed him noticing. Their eyes met for half a second, hers widening with something like panic, before she tugged her sleeve down and moved away quickly. Too quickly. She caught her hip on the corner of a table. A coffee mug crashed to the floor, shattering into pieces. The diner went silent except for the sound of ceramic breaking. "Damn it," Tanya whispered, dropping to her knees. Her hands shook as she picked up the pieces. "I'm so sorry. I'll clean this up." Hey, no worries," the old man at the counter said kindly. "Happens to everybody." But Marcus saw what nobody else did, tears gathering in her eyes that had nothing to do with a broken mug. And when she stood, she put weight on that left leg wrong and winced. A sharp wince she tried to hide by coughing. The cook came out, a heavy-set man with kind, tired eyes. "Tanya, you okay?" "Fine, Ray, just clumsy today." Her voice was bright. Too bright. Marcus looked at his crew. They'd all gone quiet. Men who'd seen things. Men who recognized things. Devon leaned in. "Boss, I know," Marcus said quietly. They finished their coffee in near silence. The usual banter felt wrong now, disrespectful somehow. Marcus left 2 20s for a $6 tab, then pulled out one of his business cards, the ones with just his first name and a phone number. No logo, nothing threatening. He waited until Tanya came back to clear their table. "Ma'am," he said, standing. The rest of his crew stood too, out of habit and respect. "You take care of yourself?" She looked at him, really looked, and for a moment something passed between them. An understanding, a question, maybe a plea. "You too," she said softly. Marcus placed the card under the 20s face down. Then he and his crew walked out, the bell chiming again as they left. Outside, the late afternoon sun painted everything gold. The bikes sat in a perfect row, chrome gleaming like promises. Marcus pulled on his sunglasses but didn't mount his bike yet. "We stayin'?" Devon asked. "Not yet," Marcus said, "but we're coming back." He looked back through the window. Tanya was standing at their table, staring down at the card and the money. She picked up the card slowly, read it, then pressed it against her chest like a secret. That's when Marcus saw them. 3 motorcycles pulling into the far end of the parking lot. Darker bikes, meaner edges, with serpents painted across their gas tanks in violent red. Mouths open and ready to strike. Tanya saw them too. Through the window, Marcus watched her face drain of all color. She stumbled backward, the card falling from her hand. She didn't pick it up. She just moved quickly toward the kitchen, her limp forgotten in her urgency to disappear. The men on the dark bikes hadn't dismounted yet. They just sat there, engines rumbling like threats, watching the diner. Watching her, Marcus's hand curled into a fist. "Boss," Devon said, a warning in his voice. "We don't know what this is." "We know enough," Marcus said, but he didn't move toward them. Not yet. Instead, he started his bike and his crew followed suit. 12 engines roared to life in unison, a sound like thunder, like a promise. As they pulled away, Marcus looked in his mirror one last time. The men on the dark bikes were still there, still watching. And through the diner window, he could just make out Tanya's silhouette in the kitchen doorway. She was shaking. The rain started at 9 o'clock that evening. Marcus turned his bike back toward Rose's diner. He'd tried to stay away, told himself it wasn't his business, drove 20 miles toward home with his crew, listening to Devon talk about his daughter's soccer game, pretending everything was normal. But that image, Tanya's face draining of color, her hands shaking, wouldn't leave him alone. "You know we're going back," Devon had said finally. Marcus had nodded. "Yeah." Now 4 of them rode through the rain. Marcus, Devon, and 2 others, Carlos and Big Sam. The rest of the crew had families waiting. But these 4 understood the kind of debt you owed to strangers who needed help. The diner's neon sign flickered against the wet darkness. Rose's Diner, half the letters dead or dying. The parking lot was nearly empty except for 3 motorcycles lined up near the entrance like sentries. Dark bikes with red serpent logos. They were still here. "Park across the street," Marcus said quietly into his headset. "Lights off." They pulled into a closed gas station opposite the diner, far enough to watch but close enough to move fast if needed. Through the rain-streaked windows, they could see inside clearly. Tanya was wiping down the counter, moving slower now, the limp more pronounced. She looked exhausted, but every few seconds she glanced toward the corner booth where 3 men sat. Leather jackets dark with rain, their patches visible even from across the street. "Death Vipers," Carlos said, pointing. "That's Shane in the middle." "I'd recognize that bastard anywhere." Marcus looked at him sharply. "You know him?" "Know of him. Runs a chop shop operation out of the industrial zone. Mean son of a bitch. Heard he put 2 guys in the hospital last year over a $50 debt." Carlos spat into the rain. "The kind who enjoys hurting people." As if on cue, Shane stood up. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with a scar running from his eyebrow to his cheek. He walked toward the counter where Tanya stood frozen. Marcus's hand moved to his door handle. "Easy," Devon warned. Through the window, they watched Shane lean against the counter, too close to Tanya. She stepped back. He followed. His mouth was moving. They couldn't hear the words, but the body language was crystal clear, aggressive, possessive. Tanya shook her head, her hands gripping the counter's edge. Shane reached out and grabbed her wrist, the bruised one. Even from across the street, they saw her face contort in pain. Marcus's door opened before he realized he'd moved. "Boss," Devon started. But then something unexpected happened. The cook, Ray, came through the kitchen door carrying a baseball bat. Not threatening, just visible. He stood next to Tanya, solid and unmovable, said something short, pointed toward the door. Shane's laugh was visible even without sound. He released Tanya's wrist, held up both hands in mock surrender. But as he backed toward his booth, he pointed at Tanya, then tapped his watch. "A clear message, I'll be back." "I've got time." Marcus forced himself back into his seat, forced his breathing to steady. "She knows him," Big Sam said quietly. That wasn't random intimidation. That was personal. The Vipers threw money on the table, not enough probably, and walked out. The rain had slowed to a drizzle. They mounted their bikes without hurry, supremely confident. Before starting his engine, Shane looked back at the diner one more time. Then he looked directly across the street at them. Marcus's blood froze. They'd been made. Shane smiled slowly, revved his engine twice, a challenge, then pulled away, his crew following. Their taillights disappeared into the darkness like red eyes closing. "He saw us," Devon said. "Yeah." Marcus watched the road where they'd vanished. He wanted us to see him. Inside the diner, Tanya had collapsed onto a stool, her face in her hands. Ray stood beside her, one hand on her shoulder. After a moment, she looked up, wiped her eyes, and stood. Forced herself to keep working. "To keep moving. We need to leave," Devon said. "If Shane knows we're watching, he might come back harder." "Yeah," Marcus started his engine. "But we're not leaving her alone." "What's the play?" Marcus thought about his mother. About the night his father had finally gone too far. About how nobody had helped until it was almost too late. About how silence and good intentions meant nothing without action. But he also thought about strategy. About the fact that Shane was expecting a fight. Men like him always expected fists and fury. They understood that language, so Marcus would speak a different one. "We find out everything," he said. "Who Shane is, what he wants with Tanya, why she's scared. And then we don't just chase him off. We make sure he can't come back." "How?" Marcus pulled on his helmet, rain streaming down his visor. "By being smarter than him." The Steel Rider's auto shop smelled like motor oil and possibility. Marcus arrived at 6 a.m., before the sun had burned off the night's fog. The shop sat on the respectable side of town, a legitimate business they'd built over 8 years. Clean, legal, everything their father's generation hadn't been. Devon was already there, bent over a computer in the office. "Couldn't sleep either?" Marcus asked. "Not after last night." Devon turned the screen. "Detective Williams sent this over an hour ago. The file on Shane Garrett was thick. Assault charges dismissed. Suspected involvement in stolen vehicle operations. Insufficient evidence. Known associate of organized crime. Unproven. The pattern was clear. Dangerous but careful. Smart enough to stay just outside the law's reach." "There's more," Devon said. He clicked to another document. A photograph appeared. A younger Shane, maybe 5 years ago, arm around a smiling black woman at some outdoor festival. The woman's face was partially obscured by sunglasses and a summer hat, but Marcus recognized the slope of her shoulders, the shape of her smile. "Tanya," Marcus said quietly. "They were together for 2 years. According to Williams's source, she filed a restraining order 3 years ago, but it expired after 12 months. Then she disappeared from public records entirely." The office door opened. Carlos walked in carrying coffee and a grease-stained folder. "Got what you asked for," he said, dropping the folder on the desk. "Called my cousin in county records. Did some creative searching?" He grinned. "Tanya Mitchell doesn't exist before 3 years ago. But Tanya Brooks, she shows up everywhere before that. Same birthday, same social security pattern." Marcus opened the folder. DMV records, employment history, a blurry newspaper photo from a community fundraiser, all under the name Tanya Brooks. "She changed her name," Devon said. "Used her mother's maiden name. Started over. Smart girl," Carlos added. "Moved 60 miles away. Took a job at a nothing diner where nobody asked questions. Thought she was safe." Marcus's jaw tightened. "How'd Shane find her?" "That's where it gets interesting." Carlos pulled out another sheet. "Remember the diner Tanya used to work at? Little place called Eddie's near the industrial zone." "I know Eddie's," Devon said. "Right next door to Shane's main operation, a garage called Viper Motors." Tanya worked the morning shift, which means she saw everything coming and going. Every shipment, every suspicious transaction. She was a witness to whatever they were running. The pieces clicked together in Marcus's mind like an engine falling into place. She wasn't just his girlfriend, he said slowly. She was a liability. Exactly. Williams's source says the feds have been watching Viper Motors for 18 months. Suspicion of running stolen auto parts through what looks like a legitimate repair shop. They strip bikes and cars, move parts across state lines, sell them to unsuspecting shops. Big money, minimal risk if nobody talks. And Tanya could talk, Marcus finished. Big Sam arrived then, his massive frame filling the doorway. Despite his nickname, he stood 6'5" and 300 pounds of solid muscle, but his voice was soft. Just drove past Viper Motors, he said. Place is busy this morning. Lots of bikes coming and going. But here's what's weird. I recognize 2 of those bikes. They were reported stolen in 3 different counties last month. Marcus stood, pacing the small office. His crew watched him think. They'd learned years ago to let him work through problems his way. Shane found Tanya, Marcus said finally. Probably through sheer bad luck. Someone recognized her or she wasn't careful enough. Now he's back in her life and he's sending a message. Keep quiet, or else. So we go in there and teach him what or else really means, Carlos said, cracking his knuckles. No. They all looked at Marcus in surprise. Boss, we can't just let this, Devon started. We're not letting anything slide, Marcus interrupted, his voice calm but with steel underneath. But think about it. Shane expects us to come at him with fists. It's what guys like him understand. We roll up to his shop, throw some punches, maybe win, maybe lose, and then what? He comes back harder, brings more guys. It escalates. People get hurt. Maybe Tanya gets hurt in the crossfire. He turned to face them fully. We're not doing this his way. We're doing it smart. He pointed at the papers scattered across the desk. William says the feds need evidence. We'll get them evidence. We'll expose every illegal operation Shane runs. We'll tear down his empire piece by piece until there's nothing left for him to come back to. And Tanya stays safe because Shane's too busy dealing with the cops to think about her. We protect her by making him irrelevant, Devon said, understanding dawning. Exactly. Carlos whistled low. That's cold, boss. I like it. It's strategic, Marcus corrected. And it works. He looked at each of them. We do surveillance. We document everything. We build a case the feds can't ignore. And we make sure Tanya's name never comes up in any of it. How long will that take? Big Sam asked. Marcus smiled grimly. However long it takes. We've got time. Shane doesn't know that yet, but he will. Tanya's apartment was on the 3rd floor of a building that had seen better decades. Peeling paint. A broken buzzer system. The kind of place where nobody asked questions and the rent was always cash. Safe, she'd thought when she moved in 3 years ago. Anonymous, she'd been wrong. 2 days had passed since the night at the diner. 2 days of looking over her shoulder. 2 days of Shane's words echoing in her head. I found you once. I'll always find you. She'd called in sick to work, something she never did. Ray had understood without asking. Take all the time you need, he'd said gently. Now Tanya sat on her worn couch staring at her phone. The business card sat on the coffee table. Just a name and a number. Marcus, 5550147. She'd picked it up 100 times. Put it down 100 times. What would she even say? Help me, I'm scared. She'd tried the police before. They'd been sympathetic, filed reports, issued a restraining order that had meant nothing the moment Shane decided it meant nothing. A knock at the door made her jump. Tanya's heart hammered. She moved silently to the peephole, her bad leg throbbing. It was worse when she was stressed, the old injury flaring up like a reminder of the night she'd finally left. Shane, the night he'd pushed. Her down the stairs, the hallway was empty. She waited a full minute before unlocking the door and opening it. Carefully, nothing. Just the usual stained carpet and flickering, fluorescent light. Then she looked down. Cardboard box sat at her doorstep. Plain brown, no markings. A white envelope rested on top. Tanya glanced down the hallway, still empty. She grabbed the box quickly and retreated inside, locking the door behind her. Her hands shook as she opened the envelope. The note inside was written in neat, blocky handwriting. You're safe now. M4 words, simple, impossible. Tanya opened the box with trembling fingers. Inside, wrapped in tissue paper, was a pair of shoes. Not just any shoes, orthopedic walking shoes, the expensive kind with proper arch support and cushioned soles. Black professional, her exact size. A small tag was attached, for the long shifts. Something cracked open in Tanya's chest. She sat on the floor holding the shoes and cried. Not from fear this time, from something else. Something she'd almost forgotten existed. Kindness, given without asking anything in return. She cried until she had no tears left. Then she put the shoes on. They fit perfectly. When she stood and took a few steps, her leg didn't protest. The support was exactly where she needed it. How did he know? Tanya walked to the window, wiping her eyes. Her apartment overlooked the street, a quiet road with a laundromat, a closed pawn shop, and a small parking lot. She pulled back the curtain slightly. 3 motorcycles were parked across the street, chrome gleaming even in the overcast afternoon light. 2 men bent over one of the bikes, seemingly adjusting something. Tools spread out, casual, natural, except Tanya recognized the leather jackets. The way one man, Devon, she thought, kept glancing up at her building. The way another kept his hand near his pocket ready. They were watching, protecting. Her first instinct was panic. They're strangers. You don't know them. But even as the thought formed, she realized she did know something important. They'd seen her at her lowest and hadn't demanded anything. Hadn't judged. Just left a card and walked away, and now they were here keeping watch, asking nothing in return. Tanya let the curtain fall back into place. She should feel violated, watched. Instead, for the first time in 2 days, her shoulders relaxed. Her breathing steadied. She walked to her couch and picked up Marcus's card again. This time she saved the number in her phone. Didn't call, just saved it. A lifeline if she needed it. That night, she slept better than she had in weeks. The warehouse on Pike Street had been abandoned for 6 years, according to county records. Empty, forgotten. A ghost building in a neighborhood of ghost buildings, except it wasn't empty. Marcus crouched on the roof of the adjacent building, night vision binoculars pressed to his eyes. Below, in the supposedly abandoned warehouse, lights blazed behind blacked-out windows. Vehicles moved in and out through a side entrance carefully hidden from the main road. Count, Devon whispered beside him. 4 bikes in the last hour. 2 trucks, all Viper affiliates. Marcus lowered the binoculars. And look at the security. Cameras at every corner, motion sensors on the doors, guard rotation every 30 minutes. That's a lot of protection for an empty building, Devon observed. Because it's not about what's inside now, Marcus said slowly. It's about what moves through here. They'd been surveilling Viper motors for 5 days. What they'd discovered was more sophisticated than expected. The garage was legitimate, barely, doing just enough real work to maintain the cover. But the real operation ran through 3 other locations. This warehouse, a storage unit facility on the east side, and a paint shop near the county line. A network, carefully constructed. Almost invisible, almost. Carlos, you in position? Marcus spoke quietly into his radio. Affirmative. Got eyes on the loading dock. Carlos's voice crackled back. They're moving something big tonight. Just saw a flatbed arrive with what looks like motorcycle frames. At least 20 of them. Get footage, Marcus ordered. Everything. Big Sam's voice came through next. Boss, I'm at the paint shop. They're respraying a Ducati right now. Still has the original VIN visible. Matches the one reported stolen in Columbus 3 weeks ago. Marcus smiled grimly. Document it. Make sure you get the VIN numbers clear. This was the pattern they'd uncovered. Shane's crew stole high-end motorcycles and cars across multiple states, brought them to the warehouse for disassembly, moved the parts to storage units, resprayed valuable frames at the paint shop with new colors and fake documentation, then sold everything through seemingly legitimate channels, including their own repair shop. Brilliant, profitable, completely illegal, and they were about to tear it all down. Devon, the drone ready? Devon held up a small quadcopter, barely bigger than his hand. Modified it myself. Silent running infrared camera, GPS tracking. Completely untraceable. Send it up. The drone lifted into the night sky, invisible and silent. On Devon's tablet, thermal images appeared. Heat signatures moving inside the warehouse. People working, machinery running. A full operation in what public records claimed was an empty building. Beautiful, Devon breathed. This is everything the feds need. But Marcus wasn't satisfied yet. Evidence is one thing. Proof of the larger network is another. We need the connection between all three locations. We need to show this isn't just one bad warehouse, it's an organized operation. As if on cue, Carlos's voice crackled. Boss, got something. 2 men just loaded a truck with parts. I ran the plates. Trucks registered to a shell company. Same company that owns the storage units Devon checked out last week. And the paint shop, Big Sam added. Just checked. Same LLC owns all 3 properties. There it was, the thread that connected everything. Who owns the LLC? Marcus asked. Devon was already typing on his tablet. Searching now, got it. Viper Automotive Holdings. And the registered agent is... He paused. Shane Garrett. Marcus felt the satisfaction of pieces falling into perfect alignment. Send everything to Detective Williams. Every photo, every video, every document, and make copies for the news stations, all 3 major networks. Boss, are you sure? Devon looked uncertain. The news could complicate things. Make Shane suspicious. That's the point, Marcus said. We're not just taking him down. We're making sure everyone knows what he did. No shadows to hide in this time. Over the next hour, they executed the plan with precision. Anonymous email accounts, untraceable uploads, carefully worded tips that provided just enough information without revealing their source. To Detective Williams. Check Pike Street warehouse. Active chop shop. Thermal imaging attached. To Channel 7 News major theft ring operating in industrial zone. Evidence attached. More coming. To the FBI's cybercrime unit. Interstate vehicle theft operation. Documentation of sales across state lines. VIN numbers included. Every message sent from different locations, different devices. Nothing traced back to them. Nothing that mentioned Tanya. It's done, Devon said finally, closing his laptop. Everything's sent. How long until Williams moves? Big Sam asked over the radio. Based on what we gave him? 2 hours maximum. He'll need to verify, get warrants, coordinate with other agencies. Marcus checked his watch. By Friday morning, Viper Motors will be swarming with cops. And Shane will be too busy dealing with the fallout to think about Tanya. Marcus stood, stretching his stiff muscles. That's the point. We removed the threat without Tanya ever being exposed as a witness. What if he figures out it was us? Carlos asked. Marcus smiled coldly. We didn't do anything. We just observed and shared what we observed with the appropriate authorities. Nothing illegal about that. As they packed up their surveillance equipment, Marcus took one last look at the warehouse. Inside, Shane's crew continued their work, completely unaware that their entire operation had just been documented, packaged, and delivered to every law enforcement agency that could possibly care. The empire built on fear was about to crumble, and it would happen without a single punch thrown. Tanya had made a mistake coming back to work so soon. She'd hoped a week would be enough for things to settle, for Shane to crawl back into the hole he'd come from. Ray swore the Steel Riders were still watching, that she was safe. But safety, Tanya had learned, was relative. It was past midnight when her shift ended, the diner empty except for Ray counting cash in the office. She took the trash out back, following her usual routine. The alley smelled of grease and rain-soaked cardboard. When she lifted the dumpster lid, a voice froze her in place. Hello, Tanya. She dropped the bag. Trash spilled across the wet ground. Shane stepped out from behind a truck, thinner now, shadows under his eyes, his jacket unzipped. Alone. Shane, she breathed. You can't be here. I just want to talk. He moved closer and she pressed against the brick wall. There was no swagger, no threat, just exhaustion. Please, 5 minutes, I'll scream. Ray's inside. I know. He stopped a few feet away. For the first time, Tanya saw fear in his eyes. My life's falling apart. The cops raided the garage. Accounts frozen, crew gone. Someone talked. Her heart thudded. The Steel Riders. They'd actually done it. I don't know what you want, she said. I want you to know I'm sorry. His voice cracked. For all of it. Tanya stared, stunned. Shane didn't apologize, ever. You broke my leg, she said quietly. Told the hospital I was clumsy. I know. You made me afraid of my own shadow. I know, he whispered, but I did love you, Tanya, in my own way. And when you left, everything good left too. That wasn't love. That was control. I know that now. He stepped forward, hands raised. I'm leaving, going south. I just needed to tell you I'm sorry. To ask if there's any part of you that could ever... No, the word hung sharp and final. I'll never forgive you, Tanya said, her voice firm. You didn't love me. You owned me, and I'm done being owned. Tanya, no. Both turned toward the alley entrance. Marcus stood there, calm and immovable, the streetlight framing his silhouette. This doesn't concern you, Shane snapped. It does, Marcus said evenly. The moment you came here, it did. Shane's eyes narrowed. You're the one who's been feeding the cops. No, Marcus said. They did their job. We just helped them see. For a moment, anger flickered in Shane's eyes, but then it faded. His shoulders slumped. You took everything from me. You built everything on fear, Marcus replied. Fear collapses when people stop being afraid. Shane looked at Tanya, searching her face. Are you with him now? I'm with myself, she said. For the first time in years. Marcus's voice softened. We built something better, on respect, on trust. That's why it lasts. Shane let out a hollow laugh. Guess you win. This isn't about winning, Marcus said. It's about letting her live without fear. Shane looked between them, small now, human. I'm leaving tonight. You'll never see me again. Good, Tanya said. He nodded once, glanced at her with quiet regret, then turned and walked into the dark. No roar of engines, no dramatics. Just footsteps fading into the night. When Tanya's knees buckled, Marcus caught her, lowering her to the back step. She wasn't crying, just hollow, like something heavy had finally lifted. Is it over? She whispered. Yeah, Marcus said softly. It's over. Just breathe, so she did. For the first time in 3 years, Tanya breathed freely. 3 months later, a new sign gleamed above the diner. The Silver Feather. Ray stood beside her, hands in his pockets. You sure about this name? Positive. New name, new start. He'd made her co-owner, saying she'd earned it. The diner was reborn. Fresh paint, new booths, a working jukebox, good coffee. It felt lighter now, safe. The ghosts were gone. By evening, the place buzzed with life. Tanya moved through the crowd easily, her limp barely noticeable. As she refilled a coffee pot, the low rumble of engines rolled through the parking lot. 12 bikes pulled in, chrome gleaming in the sunset. The steel riders. The bell chimed as they entered, Marcus leading. This time no one stared. The riders were locals now, protectors turned neighbors. Welcome to the Silver Feather, Tanya said, smiling. Nice name, Devon grinned. Got a story behind it? Everything's got a story, Tanya said. Back booth? Marcus nodded approval. When she brought their coffee, he studied the new space. You did good, he said quietly. Place feels right. We had help, she replied. Someone showed us what safety feels like. Their eyes met, mutual understanding, quiet gratitude. Marcus reached into his jacket and set a small silver keychain beside his cup. A feather. The word freedom engraved along its spine. What's this? Tanya asked. For when you're ready to ride, Marcus said with a faint smile. I don't know how to ride a motorcycle. That's what lessons are for. No rush. Tanya closed her fingers around the keychain. The sunset glowed through the window, filling the diner with amber light. Freedom. The word felt real now. Thank you, she whispered. You did the hard part, Marcus said. You survived. You rebuilt. We just gave you space to breathe. When the riders finished their coffee, each man nodded to her before leaving. Devon with a grin, Big Sam with a soft smile, Carlos with a playful salute. Marcus was last. At the doorway he looked back, raised a hand in farewell. Tanya raised hers in return. As his engine faded into the distance, she felt tears on her cheeks, not of fear but of gratitude and release. She looked down at the feather keychain. Freedom. Maybe she'd learn to ride. Maybe not. The choice was hers. That, she thought, was the real gift. 6 months later, a new bike pulled into the Silver Feathers lot, sleek midnight blue with silver accents. Tanya removed her helmet, sunlight catching her smile. Her leg no longer hurt. Marcus had connected her with a surgeon. who'd repaired what Shane had broken years ago. Inside, Ray grinned at her wind-blown hair. "Good ride?" "The best," she said. The silver feather keychain dangled from her bike's ignition, not as a symbol of rescue, but of strength. Sometimes she rode with the Steel Riders now, not behind them, not needing protection, but beside them. As family, because in the end, they hadn't just given her safety or justice, they'd given her back herself, and that was freedom. The end, sometimes the most powerful thing you can do for someone isn't to fight their battles for them. It's to make sure they have the strength, the space, and the support to fight those battles themselves. The Steel Riders understood that, and in understanding it, they changed everything.